everyone, it's Colin from Legalized Mystery Productions. Thank you for joining me and welcome. This is the first part of our next step-by-step tutorial series, How to Paint Imperial Fifth Space Marines. I'm really excited about this one. I get asked about yellow a lot. It is a very, very challenging color to paint, but I'm going to show you how I go about achieving a really vibrant, rich, visually interesting yellow using a fairly simple recipe and, of course, an airbrush. First thing I've done is I've primed the model white, and then we're going to go ahead and use these three colors. We have Vallejo Game Air Burned Flesh, Vallejo Model Air Yellow Ochre, and then Vallejo Game Air Gold Yellow. So what makes working with yellow a little different is we're going to go about our highlighting and shading a little bit differently than we do in a traditional color scheme. Because yellow is, by and large, a very transparent color, it doesn't cover very well at all. That's why it's so challenging to paint. What we're going to do is we're going to start out with a base coat of this yellow ochre. And this is a nice yellow. It's fairly vibrant. It's a true yellow. It is a little bit ochre. It does have that kind of desaturated yellow. But when I put it on the model, you'll see it's still a nice looking yellow. We're going to do an overall base coat with this. Then we're going to go back and we're going to put in the shadows with this burned flesh. I love this color. It's kind of an orangey, fleshy, brownish orange color. This is a brilliant color to shade yellow with. Stumbled on it a few years ago, and this is now just what I use if I'm going for like a really, really vibrant yellow. So after we put the shadows in, then we're going to go back and do the highlights with this gold yellow, and this is the pop color. This is the color that is going to just amplify everything, bring everything up another notch, and give it that really warm, rich, true yellow color in the end. And that's going to act as a highlight and a glaze, and you're going to see it has a wonderful effect on the model. And that's it for the base coat. We'll do an edge highlight and probably an oil wash to finish it off, but for the base coat, that's it, 3 colors. So we get our airbrush and do a nice base coat with that yellow ochre from Vallejo Model Air. And this is all over. We're not paying attention necessarily to, highlights and shadows or anything like that. This is an all over base coat because that burned flesh we're going to be putting on pretty thin because we want a really smooth transition. So we don't want to put that burned flesh over just primer. But because yellow is a little transparent, you want to be a little easy on the first go round. Just get a nice cover, nice coat, and then go back around and kind of deepen that base coat, get a little more even. Make sure you didn't miss anywhere. We'll be doing this with the burnt flesh, but we want a really good, solid base to work off of with the yellow ochre. So and this is my go-to. This is same yellow I used for the towel. If you check out my Instagram or Facebook page, you'll see the yellow and gray towel. This is the same yellow I used for the Space Wolves that I've been doing for their shoulder pad. This is the same yellow recipe I used. So for a really rich yellow, this is my go-to. And when you find a recipe like that, when you find a recipe that works, there is nothing wrong with using it whenever you need a rich yellow. Oh, this is my yellow. I do it everywhere. So on some projects, little one-offs, like when I did a Baden or Magnus or something, it's fun to play around with different things, or just different elements, but there's no need to reinvent the wheel every time you go and do yellow. Because, especially with a color like yellow, you find something that works, you just want to go with it. So as you can see, we have a nice base coat on there, and it is a fairly bright yellow. I mean, this is not just a kind of yellow. This is a nice yellow. We're going to make it even more intense. So we're going to thin down the burned flesh. It's already pretty thin out of the bottle, but we're going to add a little bit of water, thin this down, and that way we get some really smooth transitions. Because when working with yellow, the difficulty is how hard it is to go back and kind of fix mistakes or cover up. Like when we were doing the ultramarine, we could go back with a blue and we can cover just about anything. I have no doubt that over the course of this tutorial, I will make a mistake and get some paint on the yellow where it's not supposed to be. And then that'll give me an opportunity to show you how I go about fixing those mistakes on yellow. It is possible. It's not super, super tricky, but don't worry, we'll get there because I'll for sure make a mistake. So here we have just that yellow ochre, and then you can see just how thin that burned flesh is. I mean, it's really, really thin. We are working thin because we want to have a really gradual transition from the shadow into the highlight. And it is you'll see, it's going to have an effect on the yellow. The yellow is going to get covered very easily. So we're going to start on the front of his left leg, just doing a little, and we're sticking to the shadows here, inside of the leg, kind of the crotch area, and then we want to really turn him, and you can see how much that's already getting shaded with that burned flesh. And we haven't even really, that's just one pass with this very watered down. So we can darken like the inside of the leg there, flip him upside down, and spray the underside of the arms, the underside of the shoulder pad. Now that's not affecting the yellow on top, but that's the same shadow that we would have had if we had done the head, shoulders, knees, and toes, top of the backpack, top of the arms. If we had shaded the top of the arms, that's the same shadow we would have achieved. We're just doing it in reverse. So knowing that we need the top of the arms to stay highlighted, we're going to turn him over and we're going to shade the underside of the arm. It'll give us the same effect. It's just a backwards application. So looking back here, we need to get back in here and do this side of the inside of the foot, back underneath that little ankle nub thing. So continuing in the middle of the torso, because remember, we want that middle area to be shaded to elongate the figure. So inside of the right leg, again, in the back of the torso area there, and then the shoulder pad is going to be really important. So we want to get that nice, sprayed that a little too much, and what that's going to do is that's going to give us a little bit of a hard line. You can see there's a little bit of a hard line between that burned flesh and it's kind of rounded because of the airbrush, because just how paint comes out of the airbrush. So what we're going to do, and that's not what we want. That's not what we want. So we're going to let that dry, hit it with a little bit of air, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to push down, I'm going to have the air going, and then I'm just going to bump, I'm just going to kind of, you can see how thin that goes on and how quick it dries out. So I'm just kind of doing little bumps on the trigger. And that's a great way to get just a little bit of paint on something and have it dry. You get just a little paint and then have it dry and kind of work those transitions very easily versus trying to just hope that you get a nice, see, Now it's a much nicer transition, much smoother. So now we're going to move on, get the back of the helmet. So you can see there we're starting to really develop those shadows, right? So again, turn them upside down, hit the bottom of the backpack. And we got a little bit on this shoulder pad over here because we kind of got a little squirrely with the airbrush. That's okay. We want that to be shaded, so it's not a bad thing. Make sure to get behind the backpack and the little exhaust nubs there. And then again, we want to make sure to get in that kind of mid-torso area. Kind of hitting the back of the helmet's a really important shadow, so I want to make sure to get that nice and saturated with the burnt flesh. The backpack is starting to shape up nicely. And just by angling the model and how we shade it, you can see we're getting a really nice, like, look at the circle on that backpack. That looks freaking fantastic. Really happy with that. It doesn't always work like that. But like that circle in the middle of the backpack, I mean, that's the same shot. If you go back to like the ultramarine video, that's the same effect that we got doing it the other way around. This way, we're just kind of doing it backwards. So this is a very viable way to do shading. For yellow, it's really the only way. You can't really, like, if I were to base coat this guy in burnt flesh and try and go back and do yellow ochre over that, and then the gold yellow over the ochre, it just wouldn't look the same. It wouldn't be able, like, the gold yellow wouldn't be able to climb out from under the burnt flesh like it will with the ochre, because like the golden yellow is going to be going over the ochre. It's not necessarily going to be going over the burnt flesh. So there we have a little bit more on the front of that left leg. So far, this shading is pretty good. Like, I'm pretty happy with where those shadows are, especially on the back. We might need to go in and just do a little bit. Like, I don't know if you can see back under the arm, under the gun back there, but that's pretty light, which we want to have. And now we're kind of getting back behind, kind of trying to get over the arm and like right by the Aquila there. And then same over here, that kind of this joint, shoulder pad, gorget joint there. Try and get back in there. That also has the added effect of shading the gorget, which we also want to do. The front of the gorget there. And we got a little on the front of the pad, which is not where we want that to be. So just kind of wipe it a little bit and salvage that. So far, looking pretty good. We've got a pretty good, I really like the shade on the shoulders. I really like the shade on the back. The shade on the front is pretty good. Like the forearm, torso. And then next is really where the magic happens. So what we're going to do is we're going to do gold yellow, and it's going to be a highlight. It's going to be kind of a highlight. It's going to be kind of a highlight glaze, if that makes a lot of sense. We're not going to be 100% concerned about only getting the gold yellow in the areas where we would highlight. It's not going to be as fine an application as like the final highlight on Ultramarine, where we were really careful about just getting the front of the helmet, just getting that little area on the front of the pad, top of the knee. This isn't that. This is going to be a more of an overall, and you can see how rich that yellow is, and watch what happens to that ochre when we hit it with that golden yellow. It's just so rich. It's like Croque Madame levels of rich. So you can see we're not being overly careful. We don't just want this in the areas. We're doing a little bit of a glaze, and you can see what that does. So I hit that whole hip plate with the golden yellow. It doesn't cover up the burned flesh. The burned flesh is still in there. It just kind of works on those transitions. So you can see, like on his left knee, we have that transition from that golden yellow. It's still shaded on his front, but it makes that transition a little bit smoother. It makes that transition just kind of ease from that burned yellow, because otherwise we're going to have like orange shadows, which isn't necessarily what we want. So now you can really see between, let's see if I can, sorry. So you can really see that golden yellow on the front. That's not even, there we go. That's better. So you can see on the back, like on his right leg, we do that golden yellow versus the left leg. I'm not sure how much that is really turning up on camera, but it's happening. It's happening. Top of the backpack. Top of the helmet. Front of the helmet, obviously very important. Whoa. You see that little circle in the middle of the backpack, beautifully shaded, the back of the shoulder pads, and then it transitions up to this really, really vibrant, yellow. And sorry, let me get this. And that's it for the base coat. I mean, it really is that simple. Those three colors. And we're left with this beautiful yellow. And I'll post pictures of this up on social media and everything, so you could see just those nice transitions. The transitions on the inner leg, you can see them here. Let me see if I can zoom in a little more. Oops, wrong way. That's better. So you can see, like on the inner leg, it's a little more subtle. And then on the backpack and the back of the shoulder pads, behind the back. And then again, you can see the pad transition from that burned flesh shadow up to this really vibrant yellow. The front of the leg, kind of behind the gun there, the underside of the arm, just kind of transitions all the way up to this really true, vibrant yellow. It's just a great it's just a great yellow to start with. So from there, we're going to go and then go through our normal progression of steps. We're going to go do the detailing. And then at the end, we're going to use an oil wash to pin wash the whole model and pick out all those different details, all those little cracks and crevices in the armor, and really set this model apart. So hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And this yellow, remember, this yellow can be used everywhere. So hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Looking forward to the next step where we start to really block out the shapes on this model, and that yellow will just come alive even more. The more detail we do, the more color that we put when we do the black and the red and everything, metallics, it's just going to accentuate that yellow even more. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to the next one, and we'll see you soon.